17th and two 19th place finishes in Harrogate Town's three first seasons ever in the EFL. Really respectable campaigns. But at what point can the club start to set sights a little bit higher, show a little bit more ambition, which is difficult to talk about for a club with roots so heavily deep in non-league football. But they've got to try and strive for something new, and they're at that stage, I think, as a club. So I'm really fascinated to get into that on this EFL Debate Harrogate Town Summer Deep Dive. I'm covering all 72 clubs across the EFL over the course of summer between mid-June and mid-July. There's already been a few uploaded to YouTube and to Spotify, so go check those out once you're done with this podcast. And for this one, I'm delighted to be joined by Harrogate Town fan Neil Hirst. Neil, thanks so much for joining us. I suppose I just wanted to throw you the first question on Harrogate Town, which is how much do you feel like the 17th and 19th placed finishes are a massive achievement for the club, given what's gone before? And how much are you at a stage now where you feel like you want to start looking a bit further forward?
Good evening, Gab. Nice to chat to you. I think ever since we stepped foot in Division 2, the goal really has been nothing more extravagant than to just stay in the division. Last season was getting a bit nerve-wracking towards the end, but clearly we've done enough to stay up. And I suppose just for longevity, you can't just have that dream of just staying in Division 2. You've got to have a grander ambition. And I don't want to jinx things, but perhaps now is that time. You've kind of got a solid base. I think Simon Weaver is a man who has proven, certainly in the January transfer window, he knows how to construct the team, and when a team isn't performing well, where to fill those gaps. So I see no reason now that we can look for loftier ambitions of mid-table or somewhere out of a relegation dogfight.
Yeah, let's hope that's the case, because three defeats in the last 18 games of last season, a real solidity in place. I think in the first half of the season, Harrogate were a really exciting, creative team with Shaheem Headley especially standing out. Second half of the season, maybe a little bit more solid, but I think there was a net gain from that, and you'll be hoping you can take that solidity into the new campaign.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good summary. There was a definite change from the Christmas January transfer window. Prior to that, yes, we were losing. Sometimes we were losing quite heavily, but I don't think we had the look that we had compared to the second half of the season. We kept losing or dropping points in the final 1 or 2 minutes in extra time.
Crew was one, wasn't it?
Yeah, I could reel off quite a few where we just made a mess of it in the last couple of minutes, and that would have changed the outlook drastically. But then again, I suppose if you're going to speak to a Carlisle fan, for example, we won 1-0 away to Carlisle with, I'm pretty certain in saying we didn't have a shot on target. We won 1-0 courtesy of an own goal. So, I appreciate over the duration of a season, sometimes you get the good luck, sometimes you get the bad luck. But certainly from January onwards, once the new additions came, I think Simon acknowledged there was possibly a lack of physical power and strength in the defensive unit, certainly central defensively.
And
He noticed that.
experience,
And
possibly.
experience. Oh, yeah, all day long. Absolutely. I think we've had some great players earlier on in the season, but I just think physically, I think Colchester was a really good example. They got bullied tremendously. Akindi, Tavid, they just bossed them. And I think he saw that in a few other games as well, where physically they were being dominated. And he brought in Tom Eastman, O'Connor, and they basically stayed there since they were brought in. They stayed there and did a hell of a job.
Yeah, absolutely. We're hoping to be joined by Catherine Swin, another Harrogate Town fan, shortly, but I have to make do with Neil for now. No, Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, though, that you made, that the EFL experience of Anthony O'Connor and Tom Eastman made such a difference. Obviously, Eastman's gone back. It doesn't look like you're going to keep hold of him for next season, but you have brought in Rob McDonald, who won Player of the Year at Crewe last season. He's another one that's very experienced in the EFL and has won a few promotions to boot. So you must be quite encouraged by that capture.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be remiss of me if I didn't touch on Tom Eastman. And when he joined us, I went on the platforms, and all the Colchester fans were, "What are you doing? He's so good. We don't understand it." And then coming on loan to a relegation rival, I suppose it didn't stack up. Um, he was immense. He was immense and universally loved across the ground. And I don't want to undermine what O'Connor's done as well, because he's certainly done well, and they both can play out as well, which is something that we'd miss. But yeah, I mean the signing of Rod McDonald, yes, he's a Liverpudlian as well, which only adds to his personal appeal to me. Um, I've seen him before. I mean, he's experienced. He's played around a lot of grounds, hasn't he? Um, he is again. He's a big unit. I think he's 6'3". He should add to that solidity at the back. And yeah, I mean, there's no reason to believe he's not going to slot in that position seamlessly and carry on like we finished off last season.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. You've signed Matty Folds permanently after half a season. Was he another one who kind of added to the solidity that we saw in the second half of last season?
Really good. I mean, where I live, I work with a lot of Bradford City fans who are not always particularly pleasant to Harrogate, I must say. But they were kind of saying he's a great lad, and again, they were kind of confused about why they'd let him go. Their left back, they were saying maybe he could take his place, but he came. He was really good. I remember one game, I think it was against Leighton Orient, where he got pulled off at half time, got taken off because I think it was Smith with a Y. God, he was good. He was on fire that day.
Yeah.
But that's the exception. He was really good. He's full of energy, coming up and down the wing. I'm very happy. And then I suppose if I flip over to the right full back as well,
Mm.
we've got this lad in Toby Sims,
Yeah.
who I want to say he's born in Derbyshire, but we got him from American football. And when he arrived, it was a bit of an anomaly. Like, who the hell is he? And
Mm.
he's cracking. He's absolutely. You think of the attributes that you're looking for. He's got them. He loves a good tackle. He's great in the air. He's very quick. I suppose one thing, and this will come with time, I'm sure. When he first joined, he struggled to last the 90 minutes. I
Mm.
think he suffered from cramp, but as time went by and he got fitter and fitter, he lasted the duration. When he did get sent off, actually, now I think about it. But he lasted the duration of games, and he was a real asset and a real good addition in January. So in the fullback positions, very happy, very happy.
Yeah, and also I think you've got to credit Simon Weaver for just rebuilding the defence so successfully last season, because it was pretty much, well, it was an all new back four. So for them to establish the understanding that they did in the second half of last season was so impressive. What do you think about Josh Falkingham and where he is with Harrogate Town, and has his role evolved a little bit, Neil? Because when I think of the version of Josh Falkingham that helped you win promotion in 1920, being part of the club's rise more generally, and obviously in the first season up when Harrogate were this super high octane sort of pressing side, he was the one sort of snapping about the pitch. Now he's 32. I sort of wonder whether age has compromised his mobility a little bit, and are we seeing a different version of Josh Falkingham?
I think we are. I mean, for anybody who doesn't know him, he's an all-action kind of player. But physically, he's quite small for
Mm.
central midfield. He makes up for it in other ways. Don't get me wrong, but in that kind of when the goalie kicks it long, that's not his job. He's not going to win it. He has evolved, but I think he's had help. I think the addition of Levi Sutton, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was a January addition as well.
I think it would have been, yeah.
I think it would have been, yeah. So he's come in there as well. He's another one in the engine room who's bags of energy, getting stuck in there. But to go back to Josh Falkingham, he's one of a little group of players, and I'll add in Muldoon, Jack Muldoon into that. I'll add Warren Burrell into that. Uh, Thompson into that. These are players who played with the club for quite some time, and all of them pretty much to a person are versatile and will do a job for the club, for the manager where they want, whether that's Burrell playing at centre back, right back, holding midfield, whether Thompson's played at right back, right midfield, centre midfield. They all do a job for the greater cause rather than their own. And that's really good to see that people are going to be malleable enough to do a different job. But to go back to the point and go back to the question of Josh Falkingham, he's still a good player. He's still a good player for Division Two. I sometimes get a little bit frustrated about he's not always as forward looking as I would want him to be. And I don't know. I don't know whether that's age. I'm not entirely sure. Sometimes you'll get a sideways or a backwards pass, but what you do get from him, and he's a club captain. You can see he does a lot of talking on the pitch. He does a lot of organising, and I think he's one of those kind of players that when he's not there, you miss him for his organisational skills, not just his own kind of job in central midfield.
Yeah, absolutely. You miss him for the tucked in shirt as well. Um,
It's rare. It's rare. He does, doesn't he? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Talking of midfielders, Neil, Alex Patterson has gone to Bradford City. I think that's going to be a big loss, isn't it?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, the lad's good, and when the transfer happened, I got lots of messages saying, "What's he like? What we bought?" And yeah, it pains me to say they've got a really good player. He's got a great engine. He's very skillful, a very forward-looking, an intelligent player. Uh, one arguably that you could see playing in the division above and assimilating into there
Mm.
quite easily. And I wouldn't necessarily say that very readily about a lot of the players in a non-disrespectful way. I think that's the way it is.
Sure.
Um, so he's good. Again, I'm just gonna just pause on that for a minute. He's good when he's there and he's fit. He's not always fit. He's what's the point in having a really good player when he's not always on the park? So I would just put the caveat behind him when he's fit and
Mm.
ready and able. Top player, can't fault him. He's just not always fit and able, but he will be a
Mm.
miss for us for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I've liked him for a while, and I think that were it not for the injuries, he'd probably be playing League One Championship by now. So hopefully he can go on and have a good career with Bradford City. But you've brought in Matty Daley, and a little bit, I suppose, like Josh Osterfield. He's someone that Simon Weaver has gone to and then gone back to, even when maybe the first stint wasn't absolutely groundbreaking as such. So that suggests Simon Weaver definitely sees something in Matty Daley.
Happy with his acquisition. So I mean, I'll just go to Osterfield first. When he came, where I stand at Wetherby Road, I stand in the ground right by the dugout, so I
Okay.
can hear the conversations, I can see the interactions really within arm's reach. And when Osterfield first came, I certainly heard and got the sense that Weaver was putting a lot on him in terms of he wanted him to lead, he wanted him to dominate that midfield, he wanted to drive a lot of things via him, as in feed the ball into him and he'll ping it off wherever he thinks appropriate. Walking onto the pitch, Osterfield had a bit of swagger, like he was top boy. He almost looked a bit like Steven Gerrard in his swagger and his gait, but he didn't back it up. And ultimately, I don't think he was good enough. And I know he's gone on since then, but for me, his loss, his leaving, I wasn't all that fussed.
Do you
Uh,
think, if you don't mind me jumping in there on that,
yeah,
Neil, I've seen Josh Osterfield play, and I think his style is quite tidy and graceful. And I don't know that if his way of playing necessarily translates to perhaps what you've described of what Simon Weaver was asking him for, which was be aggressive and try and dominate that midfield. I think
yeah.
he's got a more delicate touch than that, maybe.
We can differ. I can only base it on what I saw,
Sure.
and what I saw was not a delicate touch.
Oh,
It didn't have that grace. He didn't have that fluidity. It's funny to look at him. He had all the attributes. It just didn't come off. And like I say, the next person might have a different view. Certainly, where I stand, I think that the collective group that I stand with all were kind of fairly ambivalent about when he went. It was, yeah, say la vie, have a good career, but no great loss. Um, but to go on to the lad from Huddersfield, he does look like he's got something. He does look like he's got something, and he looks a lot. He's got a lot more potential when he has more minutes under his belt. And that's probably true of any other player, but I don't know if that kind of tells me he's a confidence player or he needs a bit of a run to get into a positive rut. But he's got something. He's absolutely got something.
Is he best as a? Do you see him as a 10, as a number 8?
He often came on as a substitute, so I mean, it's a difficult question to answer. I think he could do either, to be honest, but
Okay.
probably more of an 8. Probably
Okay.
more of an 8, I think. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, we'll see, and hopefully he can have a really big season, especially with a full campaign under Simon Weaver. And I think this is, I suppose, an interesting period for Simon Weaver and his sort of marriage with Harrogate Town, because for such a large portion of it, Simon Weaver's only known incredible progress in so many ways, and probably it was going to be difficult to replicate that in League Two, because you get to a certain level and things do take a little bit more time, and you do need a little bit more patience, and that's kind of reflected in the period that Harrogate Town have just had. But what do you make of his sort of leadership qualities at Harrogate Town, and do you still think he can move this club on another level?
I do. I mean, I read basically probably everything he says in the press, and certainly I watched his interview with you not too long ago. He's a very intelligent, or at least he comes across intelligent man, very considered, and I get the impression with what we've already discussed about the January transfer window, he's not a proud man. He's not. He didn't kind of just sit in his hands and think I've got the players I've got. And I was right in purchasing them. I think he acknowledged that he maybe have got it wrong, and he got the balance wrong. So he was adaptable and willing to say I've got it wrong and change the personnel. I see that as a really positive attribute. I think as well the other thing I would probably say is perhaps before Christmas, I think there was a hesitancy for him to change his personnel on field. His subs were often very late in the game. Uh, and too late often to change anything. And the crowd were often baying for him to change something or change the formation, change the personnel. I don't know why it is, but at a certain point in time, he changed, and he was far more willing. I seem to remember, I think it was the away game at Doncaster, and it was 0-0. God, Doncaster were terrible, but we weren't scoring, and he did. He changed his personnel. I think it was the subs that came on. I think it was Pato who scored actually.
Was that the one
And
where there was 4 subs at half time or
I
something?
think it might have been that one,
Yeah.
yeah. And it just goes to show. I mean, he's adaptable enough to kind of look at what's going on. It isn't working. I'm going to change it. And when he does, by and large, it worked. And I don't
Mm.
know if that's a confidence thing. I don't know if that's him getting used to Division Two, but it's working. And he should have faith in himself that those decisions that he's making are right, and then they are appropriate, and they will deliver. And often that was the difference between getting a point and getting a win.
Yeah. The other thing I would say about Simon Weaver, Neil, is that I look at lots of other managers across the EFL, and they all seem to be, even really good managers. They can seem, some of them can seem a little bit volatile, or a little bit unhinged, or a little bit where you don't quite know what they're going to say from one moment to the next. Whereas actually, I think if you're in a player's position, I think there's a large demographic of players that would actually want a sort of more calming sort of style of leadership, that's someone that doesn't get too carried away with the emotions of things. And it feels like Simon Weaver really provides that kind of leadership, doesn't he?
He does. He's calm. Like I said before, he's calm. He's considered. It's. I'm not saying I've never seen him lose his rag, but it's very rare, and it's
Yeah.
for a very short period of
You want
time.
to keep it to a minimum, don't you?
You do, you do, you do. I mean, again, I think that's a sign of intelligence. It's managing your emotions and channeling your energy in the right areas, and he does that. He does that very well. Um, often the people around him, the coach, goalie coach Phil, they'll do the shouting and barking on his behalf at the fourth official or the opposition or whatever. But no, to your point, he's calm, he's considered, and I see that as a positive.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always a little bit skeptical sometimes when ex-players that get sort of internal staff jobs at clubs, because I sometimes wonder whether there was a meritocracy or how extensive the search process was. So, in the case of Lloyd Kerry, he obviously his association with Harrogate Town and Simon Weaver played a massive part in him now having a prominent recruitment role. But you've kind of got to credit Lloyd Kerry as well, because the recruitment in recent windows, especially in January, was actually really strong. So it feels like, and he's obviously working tirelessly. I think Simon has spoken about this. He's working tirelessly behind the scenes. So are you encouraged to see what Lloyd and Simon can pull off this summer?
Yeah, I mean, Lloyd Kerry's he's in the club DNA. He was a legend on the park, and now he's proven his worth off it. You refer to the signings we've already made. We've already touched on quite a few times about how successful they were, but I mean, there's certainly other people that we had last season that we haven't touched on. Legby was a
Mm.
revelation. He was really useful. There was quite a few really, and already this season we've already made some acquisitions. I've scribbled some of them down. There's been that many I couldn't remember them off the top of
All
my
right, I
head.
like that you've come to that level of preparation, Neil, setting
Well,
your
it speaks more about my memory than anything else. But I mean, we've already spoken about Rod McDonald and Matty Daley and Matty Foles as well. But who have we got? We got Lee.
Lim Gibson, I think, is a really
Yeah,
good signing, by the way. I think he was one of Morecambe's best players in League One last season. He's versatile, he's incredibly tenacious, great character. I think you've done really well to get him.
yeah, and from what I read, is he left back? Is he centre back? Is he a bit of both?
Well, all of the above. He can
Yeah,
play left back. He could probably play left wing back. He can play central midfield as well. He had to fill in midfield a few times for Morecambe last season because they didn't really have an orthodox destroyer, if you like. So
yeah.
he was the one they kind of brought in for a bit of tenacity. So I think I could see him doing that as well, maybe as a rotation option for Falkingham. But yeah, he can play left back as well. So very versatile.
Yeah, and everything I've read about him is great. Where I live in Skipton is not too far from Burnley, so I know quite a few Burnley fans. We've got a goalkeeper there, Lewis Thomas, who's
Mm,
apparently a bit of a unit. And just a few hours ago, Dean Cornelius. Now, my knowledge of Scottish football is not what it once was, but we've signed someone from Motherwell, and from what I read, there was a fair bit of competition in there for him. And
interesting.
and, and to go from the Scottish Premiership down to Division Two, he must have something about him.
Decent. That's a decent level. The Scottish Premiership. Yeah, that does sound reasonably encouraging. If Motherwell fans were unhappy to see him go, yeah, I don't think you can argue with that in terms of the window. So you've signed Crew's Player of the Year. I think you've signed Morecambe's Player of
He
the Year.
was. He
You've
was.
signed a good player from Motherwell. Matty Daley, you're happy to get back. I think this is looking like a good summer of recruitment, actually, when you put it all together.
It is. It is. I mean, there's only one key worry, and this might be addressed in the transfer window. Is the striker area? We haven't really got onto that early area yet, but we've got our main man Luke Armstrong, who we all know he scores the goals. His heading stats are off the scale. He's great. His dad was good as well. His dad was good as well as a player, but he's immense. Now I have a couple of worries. My first worry is we keep him and he gets injured. And my second worry is somebody comes in because I think he might have maybe a couple of years left on his contract.
I
Someone
think
will
it's
have
two
to buy
years.
him.
I
It's
think
two
it's
years.
two
Yeah,
years.
that's what I
Yeah.
think. Somebody comes in with a bid that's too good for us to turn our nose up at. So we've got Jack Muldoon, who again everybody loves. He's a cracking player, a different player from Armstrong.
Not an out and out striker, is
Not
he?
an out and out striker, no, but he's good and he's much loved. And we've got a few other players who you could argue do a job there. Um, Possibly some kind of younger players or following who's just coming through could certainly do a job. But my worry is if he left or he got injured, who would be the new central striker option for us? And to go back to the recruitment, if I had a magic wand and said, who could you go and sign? It would be a striker. Who is another question? Who is another question? But I think for comfort, another striker would not be a bad thing.
Yeah, I get the impression from inside the club there's some optimism that Luke Armstrong might be retained, but um, that almost that almost worries me more than Harrogate getting a good fee for him early on in the window, having the situation resolved, and then focusing on recruitment. Because I think the longer they retain Luke Armstrong, the longer you kind of go into that corridor of uncertainty of, do we go in for another striker? I think it would be a good thing for the club to maybe invest in a backup striker, a 19, 20-year-old that would only be expecting to start 5 to 10 games next season, that you could maybe blood in, so that if you sell Armstrong the following summer, you've got someone cooking who could maybe step up to the mantle.
Come on then, Gab, stick your hand in your magic bag and pull out a name or two. Who are you saying?
Oh God, that's the difficult thing, isn't it? It's very
It is.
difficult to replace Luke Armstrong. I'm not sure I can do that off off the top of my head, but hopefully the club can find the right options in the window, and again find a backup to Armstrong, because if he gets injured, I don't think there's anyone who could be that sort of focal point.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. They're, like I said, I don't want to undersell what Jack Muldoon though, because he's one of my favourite players. I think he's great, and some of the play following at the end of last season in particular did a really good job.
He's
Um,
exciting, I think, following.
he is. He's quick. He's really quick, and he causes. Um, oh, what's it? Who's a big Warsaw centre back? Month.
Many months there, yeah.
Oh, he caused him some right bother. But the big, less versatile centre backs, he torments something rotten, and it's great to see. He's really good, and I'm assuming he's going to keep his pace as he gets older. And he's going to be fine. But is he an out and out striker? I'm not 100% sold on that. So
Mm.
yeah, if Armstrong did go or got injured, we need another option. So any suggestions to Lloyd Kerry, Simon Weaver, or me would be gratefully received.
Oh, you're on the recruitment team as well now.
I've told you I stand by him in the dugout. He listens to my every word. He really does.
You're
He really doesn't.
the brains behind. Yeah, Simon Weaver's just the puppet, and you're the brains behind the operation. I
He's
reckon.
just a conduit. That's all. That's all. That's all.
Oh,
If
brilliant.
only. If only.
If only, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think following, you'd say maybe could serve a purpose as a second striker, and then Muldoon, I think, is at his best when he's playing a bit more off the cuff. So yeah, I think someone who's a young Forts frontman would be great if the club can bring one in. How many more additions are you expecting now?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to. I mean, what was it? That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 there, and I'm just trying to think who's left. So we've had some of our loans go. Obviously,
Mm,
Patterson's just gone. I'm not 100%. Oh, Eastman, sorry, Eastman's gone as well, hasn't he?
yeah.
Um, I think certainly in the defensive areas, I think we're probably going to be all right. I think at left back we've got Folds and we've got Gibson
Gibson.
who can do a job there. We've got
That's
Sims
good
at right.
competition, that.
Yeah, we've got Sims at right back. We've got Warren Burrell who can do a job at right back. We've got George Thompson who can do a job at right back.
Is Kane Ramsey still there?
I was just about to spit his name out as well. So I was there at Carlisle when he'd done his eye socket and cheekbone in, and again when he was playing, he was really good. Jaheim Headley
Mm,
on one side, Kane Ramsey on the other.
mm,
So from the fullback perspective, we're fine. Centre backs, I think we've got a wealth of talent there. Defensively in the midfield, we've got quite a few now. We've got Falkingham, we've got Sutton, got some new additions there. It's really the striking area. So I
mm.
think we're mainly covered. I think another striker, and I'd be fairly content because I think uh, you see on Twitter, you see on forums, we want more signings, we want more signings.
Mm.
More doesn't always equate to more. You can
Yeah.
have too many, and if you get too much of a big squad and they're not playing, and players will become disillusioned,
Mm,
disenfranchised by it all. So it's about getting the right amount of people to keep that bond in there. So yeah, I don't think we're going to be too far off. And I like the fact that this recruitment work's been done early, that they can get the practice games in, get the training, get that bond early
mm,
on. So when we play Doncaster. It's fresh information. Doncaster in the first game of the season. We're ready for it.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you will be, and actually the squad looks pretty strong as things are. And I suppose you don't want to bring too many more in because actually the academy's done quite well last 2 years. You've got George Horbury coming in, and you've got Emmanuel Elassani too,
Yeah,
who seem to be quite highly rated prospects.
they do. I think I can't say his name very well. Samney. From what I've seen, certainly in the games he's played, he looks like a handful. And again, he's a striker, so it's
Yeah.
just exactly what I need. Horbury's just signed another 1 year, so again, he's one for the future. Um, he hasn't played that many minutes in fairness to him, but from what you can see from the games he has played in the reserves, he looks like a proper player.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. In fact, you would kind of wonder, from my point of view, if there's a possibility of movement out the door. I'm not sure at this juncture whether Miles, well, the fact you've signed yourselves up two left backs. Does that mean Joe Mattock's going to be out the door? You've got a number of right backs. So is Miles Welch Hayes going to go? Dior Angus doesn't seem to have been part of the first team squad. It feels like there's a few players, maybe Tyler Frost you'd put in that category as well, Stephen Dooley, Rory McArdle, Carl Ferguson. There's a lot of players there where you're sort of thinking they might be a little bit on the periphery at the moment. And whether
Yeah, McCardle's retired now, so
ah,
he's not there anymore. Dooley, I like Dooley a lot. He came over from where did he come? Was he Morecambe? He was
it
fairly
was
close.
Rochdale, I want to say.
Rochdale. No, Rochdale. You're right. It was Rochdale. He came up from Rochdale. He's been injured for a chunk of the season,
Mm,
but really industrious. He must do more kilometres than anybody else on the park, up and down. I like him a lot. To go to Mattock, he's a funny one, and I was probably, if I'm Joe Mattock, I would be feeling a bit sorry for myself with the amount of games he played in the second half of the season because he's a cracking player. So I think he came from Rotherham,
yeah.
and everyone was basically saying the same tune. He's an absolute legend, but he's often injured, and he's come to us, and he's been fit as a fiddle. I'm not saying he's never been injured, but he's played 99% of the games, and he can do a job at centre back, and he can do a job at left back. Cracking peg on him, but he couldn't budge Foles at left back since January. I know Connor at Eastman at centre half. He wasn't going to budge them out of place either. So he's arguably too good to sit on the bench, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if he went, which would be a
Mm,
shame because he's versatile. He's very versatile. Well, Shay's a right back. I think he went on loan. I want to say it was Altrincham.
mm.
Um, he's young. He's got potential.
But you're
But
not going to have three right backs though, right? Three
and
senior
that's
right
it.
backs.
You're not. You're absolutely not. And I think everyone it's all well and good getting excited about income, and you've got to balance that with the reality of weight of numbers that there's got to
Mm,
be outgoings as well. And I think the guys that you mentioned, possibly with the exception of Dooley,
mm.
because I don't think we've seen all he has to show because he's been injured. It wouldn't be a great surprise if some of those did go.
Yeah, for sure. I think the only way for Mattock and Welch Hayes to stay on would be that if Simon Weaver goes back to the back three, which I think he used at the start of last season, where Mattock might be a contender for left of three, Welch Hayes could be a contender for right of three, but that feels like a bit of a stretch. So, um, yeah, I'm not sure that I think that we could see either of those moved on, and it'd be quite a healthy thing for the club as well to free up a bit of the wage budget. What do we think about Carl Ferguson? Because he came in without much Football League experience, and it was a tough first season, and I suppose you wouldn't have wanted to have expected too much from him. Is there a chance he comes good in the second season?
I knew this question was coming.
Did you?
I just knew.
Really?
I just knew. And I thought to myself, what do I think about him? And he's one of those players that I mean, look at his dad, Barry Ferguson. He comes from good stock, and that kind of really gives you. I think for me, if your dad's played at a level, gives reassurance that he's going to be a good player as well. It doesn't always translate, but for me, it gives me reassurance. Um, he's a very tall lad. He's quite lanky, um,
Mm,
and he can win a header. I think it's when with the balls at his feet and he's getting pressed, he shows his inexperience. Will he come good? I wouldn't be surprised if he did. He's just a bit green at the moment, so I think
Mm.
he's another one as well. I think he went out on loan to, was it National League?
Oh, Altrincham, yeah.
Altrincham, yeah, Altrincham. That I'm sure will do him all the favors in the world. I think he just needs a bit more minutes under his belt. He looks like he's got the raw attributes to do a job. He just needs to build on his confidence, I think.
Yeah, to be honest, I feel like with someone like Carl Ferguson, you're almost relying a little bit on an Anthony O'Connor um, sort of getting injured because or becoming unavailable because with Anthony O'Connor, he's got that EFL experience. And I think, as you mentioned earlier in the show, he's got that ability on the ball.
Oh yes.
Um, and so the thing that someone like Carl Ferguson needs is a run of games and to be trusted for that period, but it's difficult for him to get that when there's other centre backs that are kind of going to be available. So I have a little bit of sympathy for Kyle in this situation. But listen, hopefully he can take his opportunities when they come because it looks like he's going to need to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've already spoken about those centre backs are going to take some budging. Um, they're really physically strong. They're physically tall, and O'Connor in particular, great with the ball at his feet. On so many occasions, you just know other centre halves would have got the ball and just launched it. He's very composed, very considered. Will have a touch, lift his head up,
Mhm.
and it's great to see. It's great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you've seen an awful lot of Bradley Williams and Benjamin Tweed because it might be that their sort of experience has mainly come in sort of training or EFL Trophy games. But I wonder if you might have any intel on them.
No, no, no. To be honest, no. Only what I've read. Only what I've
Mm,
read that they're exciting young prospects. I see them on the website. I read their form. And I think the hope is this year they're going to be very slowly assimilated into the first team in some capacity, whether that's
mm.
just sitting on the bench and seeing what goes on, or come on for a few minutes. But yeah, from what I see, they're exciting prospects.
Yeah, for sure. A big year for Jack Muldoon next year, do you think?
I hope so. Everybody loves Jack Muldoon, or Mullers, as he's lovingly known. He's he's a great lad. He works really hard. He's an intelligent player. He's an experienced player. Again, he's another one who talks a lot to other players on the pitch. Um, really good with fans as well.
Mm,
He There are so many players who kind of at the game they kind of wave and then clear off. He's one of those players who will come out and he'll talk to them and get the
mm.
photos with the kids, which is really nice to see.
That
Uh,
makes
he,
a difference, doesn't it, at
it,
this
it
level?
it really does, but I mean, he's a type 1 diabetic and he does a lot of work in the community about proving type 1 diabetes isn't as an impediment to being a pro athlete like he is. So there's more to that man than just a football. He's a good guy as well. And I think that's true of a lot of the other guys in the team. Warren Burrell is another one. He always seems to take the
Mm.
time for the fans. So it's good. It's a good community club, and a lot of the players do that extra stuff, and it does mean an awful lot to the fans who go there, especially for the kids.
Yeah, for sure. I bet has your we talked off air that it was actually your lad who got you into Harrogate Town rather than the other way round. I'd love for you to share that story.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's nothing, I suppose, that much to it. I'm from, as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from Liverpool originally, and I moved around a couple of different cities, and I've lived in Yorkshire for a couple of decades now. I live in Skipton, and my firstborn child, Louis, he was born in Harrogate, so he kind of adopted them, and we were speaking off air about Boxing Day being football day, and I couldn't get tickets for Liverpool, and the geography makes it more difficult to go over there. So it made sense to go and watch Harrogate, and they're the nearest club, and he was born there. So we adopted Harrogate, and we love Harrogate, and we go, and I've been to pretty much every home game, and go to pretty much every away game, and he likes going with me to all the different grounds, and it's wonderful. And I suppose from where I've come from as a kid watching Liverpool, watching Division Two football's a different game to watch, and I mean that in a positive. You
Mm.
get really good fans who are really dedicated. to go to some really cold places on Tuesday nights. It's good, and the fans are all very good. They're all very intelligent, and they're all very committed, which I think you have to be. You have to be at this level. But it's great. I love Division Two football, and I would love it more if Harrogate were in Division One,
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
which
hopefully,
can happen.
fingers crossed. But it's going to be a tough league next year as well, Neil. I feel like the league's getting stronger with Wrexham and Notts County coming up, and MK Dons and Forest Green are coming down. They're probably going to spend big as well, and you can never write off, a couple of the managers coming down. So it's going to be tough.
It really is. It really is. I had a look a couple of days ago. I don't know whether it's changed now, but the favourite to go down at the bookies is
Harrogate Town.
Harrogate Town. We are 100 to 1 to win the league, and the biggest prize, and the favourites to go down. But the more I think about it, and more this conversation's kind of solidified it, that we've got a decent team, we've got a decent manager. There's no reason for us to go down. And the more additions we make and the more tweaks, it kind of gives me more confidence that we're not going to end up in that bottom two. Who's going to end up in that bottom two is, well, I mean, I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? Because I think who does enough you do enough predictions, and
Yeah.
sometimes they're rosy and sometimes they're way off. Who knows? But based on what we know right here, right now, and bearing in mind the window's still open for a long time, yeah, I'd probably be worried if I was Morecambe. I'd probably be worried if I was Crawley. But then who knows? Who knows?
Mm.
We don't know. Up at the other end, yeah, competition's fierce, isn't it? I think, yeah, Wrexham, Stockport County, they've
Yeah.
purchased well. I think Doncaster have purchased quite well as well.
Yeah.
Gillingham. I mean,
Gillingham looks strong.
I,
Yeah.
I could be here all day shouting out teams. Bradford, even dare I say it. I mean, they're a big club, big ground. They got money. There's loads of potential up there about who could go up. So to your point, it's a really competitive league, isn't it? It's a really competitive league. Lots of different clubs could go up, and lots of different clubs could go down. That's the beauty of Division Two, and I think you're right. This year, it's more. It's going to be more of a challenge than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the old-fashioned style of calling it Division Two as well. It's nice and
I
nice and
can't not.
traditional.
I can't
You
not.
can't not.
I still call it the Vauxhall Conference.
Oh, brilliant. Well, listen, Neil, thank you so much for your time chatting at Harrogate Town. I wish the Sulphurites all the best for next season and beyond. Make sure you go follow Neil Hirst at predictably Neil Hirst on Twitter. This has been EFL Debates, the Harrogate Town Summer Deep Dive, and we'll see you again very soon.